Hi all. I hope you guys have written answer to today's question. Our topic for today was GS4 case study. And again, in the end, I urge you all to get your answers evaluated on the platform of CollectorBabu. Let's not waste a lot of time and start discussing question. On your screen, you will be able to see two case study. I'll give you some time to read, pause the video, read the question, and then attempt the question. So this is the question, and both the question taken by me today has been 2022 PYQ. So the question is on your screen. Have a look at it, and I'll be silent for a while so that you can read the question. So these are the questions. The first being, what are the options available with Ashok to cope with the situation? Okay, so Ashok is an investigative journalist, okay, of a leading TV channel. What are the options available with him? And then critically evaluate and examine each of the options available. So try to understand that 2022 was the year where the case studies were extremely lengthy. A. B. There were many questions even in the case study. Generally, you ask two questions and sometimes three questions, but you can see five questions were asked and one question being critically evaluate with each of the options. So there will be many pros and cons that you will have to write. And what are the ethical dilemmas faced by Ashok? Which of the options do you think would be most appropriate for Ashok to adopt and why? In the above scenario, what types of training would you suggest for police officer posted to such district where stone mining illegal activities are rampant? So there are a few ways in which you can introduce this case study. One could be any current reference. So you can talk about how illegal stone mining during that year there were the case of an the case of a civil servant having been crushed to death because he went on to stop an illegal stone mining activity was very much prevalent. So if you would know any such case which took place around 1 or 1.5 year of that time, then you can use that example to connect with the wider question. Okay. Or if you're not able to recall any such situation or instances, then you can just use stakeholders approach and you can just talk about who are the stakeholders. But again, I would urge that um, technically, if you just know even one single quote, one line quote to talk about anybody's strength or resilience or integrity, because the whole crux of the question and the whole value that is at stake is for Ashok to show that he is a person of integrity and he has the courage of conviction for the actions he undertakes. Okay, so if you have any relevant quote from Mark Twain or any other relevant quote you'll be able to find on strength, courage, etc., just use that quote as an introduction. Don't explain nothing and just straight away go on to writing the answers. Why? Because again, firstly, the question is very lengthy and there are 5 questions, and the maximum marks is just 20 and maximum word is just 250. So try to use your words wisely and use your time wisely. So here I have used the stakeholder approach just so that I can tell you this is also one of the way how you can write your answer. But again, in real life examination, it depends on the amount of time you have, the length of the question, and other perspectives. You have to analyze it and then use what the way forward for you will be. So you can talk about stakeholder Ashok, CMD, community, police and civil administration, politicians, and civil society and NGO. This question was fairly on the lengthier side, so you don't have to give each and everyone's stake along in the case study given, but then you can just mention their name and go along because you don't have time. But the case, if the case study would be short, then you have to mention thoroughly what the stakes of each stakeholder is. Then let's go on to the first question, which is what are the options available with Ashok? So in this case, you have some of the options like expose the story publicly via other media platform, okay, file a complaint with relevant authorities, like approach the institutions like Lokayukta, CBI, etc., adhere to CMD advisor, and drop the story and leak the report anonymously. These are some of the options which you can think of, or pursue a middle path and seek support from civil society and NGO. These are six options. You don't need to write all the six options. You can write four options and that will suffice. Again, what many students ask is, can they club two questions? First was write the options and then was critically evaluate them. Yes, you can club. You can just make a column for A and B and just give one option and below it just write pros and cons. Even though that is two different questions, okay, you can just club them. Then you can talk about the pros and cons and try to think it along the ethical dimension. Okay, you have to talk about words like journalistic integrity, public interest. Okay, so these are some of the words that you have to keep on using. So try to use keywords as much as possible. Then talk about filing a complaint with relevant authorities. Okay, how you can leverage institutional mechanism to address corruption. Okay, like any four options you can take and write pros and cons and club up both the question A and question B. Seeking support, what would be the issue? Like there are some generic pros and cons. For example, generic pro would be that it will result in fast resolution of the conflict or the issue at stake. Then some other generic pros would be that it will adhere to rule of law. Okay, that some core value, for example, justice, integrity, or accountability, transparency, some core value that is at stake will be upheld. Okay, so you can talk about it is according to rule of law or it upholds constitutional morality. So these are some generic pros, or it will facilitate your career growth, whatever. And then there will be some generic cons. For example, it is time consuming, it violates the SOP, okay, it is against the rule of law, okay. Then these are some of the generic cons which you know. So if you don't have a lot of time, try to find these generic points and put it in your answers as cons, but don't put it in all the options. Put it in one option or two option maximum. Okay, so that does not make your answer very redundant. Then in the end, always anyway you have to talk about pursuing a middle path. Then remember that in ethics you will have no wrong answer. Whatever answer you write will reflect what your moral well-being or more, what your ethical viewpoints are. So whatever point, whatever stance you take, you have to defend it. You have to defend it using ethical frameworks. Okay, here you'll talk about ethical, then the second part is ethical dilemma faced. Okay, so here it will be conflict of interest, courage and safety, professional integrity versus loyalty, short-term gains versus long-term consequences. So these are some of the points. Again, yeah, this is one of the way to write the answer, which is the most appropriate option for which I have given is you can go to leak the report anonymously and collaborate with NGOs, become a whistleblower. Okay, that is one such way to write, but you have to defend it at any cost. If you're not able to defend it, then your answer is meaningless. For example, you can just talk about you will try to convince your boss, but once your boss is not convinced, then supposedly you will start your own channel. You'll not go for anonymous route, whatever that is. Okay. See, what would happen in this case? Ashok's career would not be jeopardized in the short term, but anyhow, such revelation would bring Ashok at stake as well. So there is something he has to compromise. Then what would be your justification? Your justification would be that courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to act on it. This is something Mark Twain said. So for justification part, you can use any quote to justify and then point-wise explanation. For example, by doing this, Ashok upholds his professional ethics and public responsibility while mitigating personal risk. Okay, which is the truth and which is something Ashok would envisage. Then the second part, leveraging anonymity ensures that the story reaches public without compromising on his safety. Okay, because personal well-being versus professional ethics, those two values, competing values, are at stake. Then we'll talk about collaboration with the NGO and civil society creates a collective voice, enhancing the impact of expose. And then in the long term, his action contributes to systemic reform and deter other corrupt practices. So, as a journalist, it is his duty that people are aware of the wrongdoings of corruption and the system should be reformed. So, he is living up to his duty. So, you can use such arguments to justify whatever stance you have taken. Then there's this point of suggest training for police officers. Okay. So first would be ethical and integrity training, that you have to conduct workshop to reinforce importance of integrity in public sphere, or maybe you can talk about codifying code of ethics. Okay. And strict adherence to code of conduct. We'll talk about leadership and accountability training, so that role model from the top of the police department becomes influential figure and role models for those at the bottom of law enforcement. Then you will talk about community policing, where community and police share a relationship based on bonhomie and trust, so that if there is any illegal activity or something, community feel safe and have that sense of trust in reporting such incidents to police, and they don't fear any backlash and repercussion on doing their rightful duty. Then talk about enhancing the surveillance investigative skill, self protection, conflict management, etc. Here you can also give certain example of, you can use some Prakash Singh judgment guidelines. You can talk about some of the recommendation this various committee like National Commission on Policing or the Ribeiro Committee, etc. They have suggested. That's it. See, we do not have a lot of. This was a fairly lengthy question. What you could do here is just conclude by saying, well, in such case, questions you do not have a lot of time. Try to understand. We can make a fairly, complex and very good answer, model answer, but you also have to see that your model answer should be one that you can replicate in real exam, so that you know what would be the time crunch or the pressure you might be feeling in real exam. Generally speaking, in very lengthy questions, just try to write one single line of conclusion. But again, five questions were already asked, so even if you miss it, it's not very bad. But try to just write one single line of conclusion, saying, um, or just reiterating the values, the core values at stake that you talked about in ethical dilemma, or that you talked about uh, in your course of action on justification for it. So we are done for the first question. Let us wait for some time and have a look at the second question. Again, I'll I'll be silent and you can look at the question on your screen and then we will discuss it. Okay, so pause, read it. I'll be reading the questions that you're supposed to write. Again, there are 5 questions. So mind you that you won't have a lot of time because this was 2022, the most unexpected year for ethics. So under the given condition, what are the options available to you as a member of inspecting team, and critically evaluate each of the options listed by you. So again, you in the actual exam have to club 1 and 2 together. Then what option would you adopt and why? Okay, so justification and the reason, and then what are the ethical dilemmas faced by you, and then consequences of overlooking the observation raised by the inspecting team. Okay, so these are the 5 questions, and you have to follow the sequence of the question. So merge 1 and 2. Okay, here in the introduction, you can just say, I have taken Warren Buffett quote. You can take any other relevant quote which you find. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. Okay, because the case is about professional ethics. The case study is about reputational damage that is being done, and the case is what you are supposed to do in that case. Well, here you just have to write options available to me. Sorry. So here you'll be talking about options available to you, not but to me, because the question is posed to you. So you can just say that you will sign the clearance report, you will refuse to sign and escalate the matter, resign from the job, but you have to understand the pros and cons of it as well. Anonymous whistleblowing, propose a middle path, that is suggested work or segregating the defective items before consignment is sent to domestic market to minimize reputational damage and negotiate with the management. Then here, in that part only, you will have to write pros and cons. Like it would save your job, it would align with manager's direction, but it would violate professional ethics, risk the company's reputation, etc. Then you will have to talk about escalating the matter. It will ensure accountability or ask for more transparency, etc. Then maintaining ethical principle and personal integrity, and the pros and cons you're able to find out. For example, in the anonymous whistleblowing part, you can just talk about how it would uh, issue it would bring the issue to light without risking immediate personal repercussion because you are anonymously whistleblowing. But see, in the last question also, we did this anonymous approach. So don't follow the same approach in all the question. Try to bring in some innovation, but that should be consistent with the ethical options you have. There you were a journalist and you had a wider duty to society, and your duty as a journalist was to bring truth to light. But here you are an employee, you have equal stake in company as well as saving your job and as well as working for the people. So you cannot just straight away go for anonymous whistleblowing. Well, you can go, but you have to justify it why you are taking that stance. But you cannot just say that you're going to quit your job on this issue. And then you will negotiate with the management, which would show loyalty to the management while advocating for ethical principle, etc. You can talk about various corporate governance principle, and you can train the management in them. So second part would be recommend options and justification. So recommended options and justifications, these are, so you will propose a middle path and escalate if necessary. You're not going to straight away quit or something. How will this work? It will work in the way that it would ensure that quality control measures are taken place because you're proposing a middle path. Okay. And this approach would balance short-term financial concern that you have and the long-term reputation of the company. Escalate the proposal if it is rejected. The management remains adamant. Escalate the issue to relevant authorities like the board of directors, the regulatory agency, which again those agencies are well within their right to control the type of or the quality of products being produced by the company. And then this approach would minimize personal risk and also address ethical and professional concerns. In the end, you will just talk about the ethical dilemmas. Ethical dilemma will always come in pair of verses: professional integrity versus job security, short-term gain versus long-term consequence. You also have to say why do you think these are the ethical dilemma in question. For example, personal values with the need to retain employment. Okay, so Job security is one such thing. So you'll talk about individual morality or collective compliance, because as a duty, as an employee, it is again your duty to follow the instruction of the management. And as a conscious citizen, your duty is that no substandard product is released, which you know will have some harm. Then you can talk about consequences of overlooking the observation raised. And I guess I missed a question. Uh, Wait a minute. No. Okay, so yes, this is it. The part D is what are the consequences of overlooking the observations. So we will talk about reputational damage, because again we have initiated the question and introduced the question with the reputation of the company or the work culture. You can talk about work culture, you can talk about consumer safety, okay, and limited regulatory compliance. So employee morale, okay, weak, poor work culture, and if such reports are leaked, then it would even lower the profitability of the company, okay, like the long term financial loss of trust would be one such thing, and loss of trust would be difficult to replace. And then you can just conclude, because again this is 5 question and it's fairly big question, so you can just conclude by saying, by proposing a balanced solution and upholding ethical principles, you can safeguard your integrity while contributing to company's long-term success. Because an employee, it is your duty to watch out for your company as well. And that's it. Please keep writing, and all the best. Goodbye. Bye bye.